Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you for joining. So I'll be sharing this meeting on YouTube Live as well. Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you for joining. Uh, okay, so before we start, we will pay homage to the Triple Gem. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu. Um, Friends, we will be discussing sutta in this program, in this meeting. Just share the sutta and this. So in the Pali Canon, the connection. I hope you can see the screen. So in the Pali Canon, there are three sections, like the Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Uh, the Sutta Pitaka it contains these teachings, and they are more descriptive, and these suttas describe uh, like a live dialogue with the Buddha. So when people come to the Buddha and when they ask questions, he would answer, and that complete story is described in the suttas. And the Vinaya Pitaka is this section which has this rules for monks and nuns in the community. And the next section is Abhidhamma Pitaka. It is called the higher doctrine, and it has a elaboration of all the teachings explained in the suttas. So the Abhidhamma Pitaka is kind of complicated, but the suttas are kind of easy to understand compared to Abhidhamma Pitaka. So we will be discussing suttas in this program. So the Sutta Pitaka has like 5 parts: Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, and Khuddaka Nikaya. So there are 5 parts in the Sutta Pitaka. So the one I chose today is Majjhima Nikaya. It contains like middle length discourses, and they're not too long, also not too short. So I chose the sutta number 44, Cūḻavedallasutta. So in this sutta, it describes a Dhamma discussion between a lay disciple named Visakha and a bhikkhuni, a nun. So she was an Arahant nun. So the story is that they were husband and wife before they becoming the Buddhist disciples. So one day, the husband, his name was Vishaka, and he met the Buddha and he listened to his teachings. And he achieved the third stage of enlightenment. That means he became a non-returner. Uh, so there are four stages of enlightenment: the stream entry, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. So Visakha achieved the third stage of enlightenment, and when they achieve that third stage of enlightenment, they completely eradicate sensual desire. So um, when he came back home, he explained this to his wife and said, I realized the Dhamma and I want to live a life of celibacy. And then his wife, her name was Dhammadinna, and she said, then might as well I become a nun and go to a nunnery. And he gave permission, and she went to a nunnery and became a nun. And later she became an arahant. So, and she was very popular by the name Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni, right? So this sutta uh, explains that Vishaka, so he's a non-returner, and he goes to Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni and respects her, and he started asking these questions. And Dhammadinna she answered all these questions, and that discussion uh, is in this sutta, right? So at that time, the Buddha was in Rajagaha. Um, the name of the monastery was Veluvana Monastery. Velu means bamboo, so it was like a bamboo grove, a bamboo forest. So the Buddha was living in that monastery. And Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni was also close by, and Vishaka, her previous husband, when she was in the lay life, he came and he approached Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni uh, and he paid respect to her and started asking these questions. So he asked, Noble lady, it is said self-identity, self-identity. What is called self-identity by the Blessed One? So we know that we have to get rid of um, identity view, the view of self, to realize the Dhamma. So the Buddha explained identity view. What is, what is identity with the view of self? So he explained this in a particular manner. So Visakha, he asked Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni, what is self-identity? So she explained, uh, Visakha, these five aggregates affected by clinging are called self-identity by the Blessed One. So there are these five, we call these five masses or five aggregates. That means the Buddha explained, he described all our experiences uh, with these five masses, or five, we call that five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Okay, these are the five aggregates. So we can call the first aggregate body. So it's like, in simple terms, it is body, uh, but it can go beyond that as well, because there are these material things in the external world as well. So when we say the first aggregate, that is form, usually it's the body, but it it goes beyond that as well. So in simple terms, let's just external things. So in this translation, So let's see who translated this. So there are these different translators, Bhikkhu Sujato, Bhikkhu Ananda Jyoti, and Suddhaso Bhikkhu, and I.B. Horner. So these are different translators. So I think this is this translation is from, I think, Sudaso. Yeah, Bhikkhu Sudaso. So he used the word body, but if you look at Bhikkhu Sujato's translation, he used the word form. So anyways, fine to the body, because when you say form, it is not only the body, but it's um, so we will just call it body. Sorry, we will call it a form. So because it's kind of a general term. So let's try to understand this. So the bhikkhuni, Dhammadina bhikkhuni said, Visakha, these five aggregates affected by clinging are called self-identity. The form aggregate, the feeling aggregate, or let's call it mass of form or mass of feeling, mass of recognition or perception, and mass of thoughts, or we can call that mental formations, and the mass of consciousness. So these are the five aggregates: Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. So these five aggregates are affected by clinging. That means we cling to these five aggregates. We cling to the form, we cling to the feelings, we cling to our perceptions and our thoughts or mental formations, and we get attached to our consciousness. So we have the view that these five things are me, mine, and myself, right? So that is called identity view or self-identity. That's how the Buddha explained this. So in order to get rid of self-identity, we need to understand what these five aggregates are and the nature of these five aggregates. So that's why the Buddha defined these five aggregates this way, or self-identity this way, because he divided this into these five parts: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. So, so she explained what the Buddha said about this, and Vishaka, he said, "Excellent, noble lady," and he delighted in her answer, in her statement. And then he asked the second question: what is called the origin of self-identity by the Blessed One? So what is the origin of this self-identity? So the answer to that question is, there is craving which produces further existence, is accompanied by delight and passion, and seeks delight in various places. So there is this craving. Craving, this is the nature of craving. It produces further existence, and means when we have craving, we are delighted to have what we crave for, and we seek delight in various things and places. So this craving is threefold. So the Buddha said, it is the craving for sensuality, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. So there is even this craving for non-existence. So these are the three types of craving, or the threefold craving. Because of this craving, self-identity or self-view of self originates. It's uh, so the origin of self-identity is the threefold craving. So these answers are precise, and it's good to kind of learn how it was explained by the Buddha. So when we learn this sutta, it is clear that the Buddha's disciples, they memorized the exact words of the Buddha to um, describe suffering and describe the cessation of suffering, or how to escape from suffering. So it is important to learn the exact words of the Buddha. So even those disciples at that time, they memorized the words of the Buddha, and they were very keen in uh, quoting the Buddha's words to describe these phenomena. So and then he asked the next question: the cessation of self-identity. So what does it mean? So she explained the remainderless cessation of that craving through dispassion, giving it up, relinquishing it, releasing it, and being detached from it. So if somebody removes craving, then self-identity will cease. So the cessation of self-identity is removing of craving, remainderless cessation of craving. That same craving which was explained before, the threefold craving for sensual pleasures, and craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. And then he asked the next question: the path of practice which leads to the cessation of self-identity. So what is it? And the answer to that question is the Noble Eightfold Path, which was explained by the Buddha. So if somebody develops the Noble Eightfold Path, that will lead to the cessation of self-identity, because the the development of the Noble Eightfold Path will remove craving and then cease the self-identity, the view of self. So they are right view, right. So this translator has used different words. If you look at Bhikkhu Sujato's translation, yeah. So right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion or concentration. So this is called uh, the Noble Eightfold Path. And then he asks this question. So uh, there is this craving which gives rise to self-identity. And self-identity is explained as these um, five aggregates or five masses: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. So, so he asks this question: is that craving identical with the five aggregates, or is craving separate from these five aggregates? So that's a good question. So the Buddha explained that the five aggregates is suffering, and we get attached to these five aggregates, and we consider these five aggregates as self. And the Buddha described these five aggregates as uh, the aggregate of form subject to clinging, aggregate of feeling subject to clinging, aggregate of perception subject to clinging, aggregate of mental formation subject to clinging, aggregate of consciousness subject to clinging. So there is clinging or attachment explained uh, with these five aggregates. So the question he asks is that craving or is that attachment identical with the five aggregates, or is craving separate from the five aggregates? So he asks, is craving something that is separate from these five aggregates? So the answer to that question is craving is not identical with the five aggregates, and it is also not separate from the five aggregates. So that's an interesting answer. So the five aggregates and craving are described in different ways, but also you cannot separate craving from these five aggregates because everything exists uh, um, as an entity, right? So you cannot separate craving from the five aggregates. And also, you cannot say that craving is the five aggregates or craving is a part of these five aggregates. You cannot say that as well. So craving is not identical with the five aggregates, and it is also not separate from the five aggregates. So how do you understand that? She said the interest and passion as regards the five aggregates is the clinging there. That means uh, that passion we have towards these five aggregates is craving. That is the attachment. So let's see how Bhikkhu Sujato translated this. Uh, so that grasping is not exact same thing as the five aggregates. No is grasping one thing and the five aggregates another. Okay, so in Pali it is said, Upadanang te panchupadana napi anyatara panchupadana khandehi upadanang. That means uh, grasping or clinging is not the same thing as the five aggregates. Also, clinging is not separate from the five aggregates. So the way he described is the desire and greed for the five aggregates is the grasping there. So grasping or clinging means the desire or greed for these five aggregates. So everything exists uh, as an entity, but we have to separate these things with our wisdom. We cannot completely remove uh, these five aggregates from clinging and then show them in like show the difference while completely separating these things. You cannot do it like now. If you take a flower, you can remove all the petals and show the world that okay, there are these five petals and they are separated. You can remove the petals and the stem and the filaments and everything, and show the others that okay, these are the petals, this is the stem, and these are the what do you call, the filaments. Uh, and you cannot do it like that with the five aggregates and craving. You cannot separate craving from the five aggregates, right? Because everything exists together. But also, craving is not the five aggregates. Also, you cannot separate craving from the five aggregates. So you have to understand that with your wisdom. So the Buddha used these words to describe and the noble truth of the cause of suffering the cessation of suffering, that is Nibbana, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So he used words to describe that. So we had to understand the meaning with our wisdom. So there is a simile in the commentaries. So if you cook, let's say, some kind of a dish, so let's say you cook a curry, and when you taste it, you can feel sweetness, sourness, and bitterness, and all these tastes in the dish, but you cannot separate sweetness from that dish because everything is mixed, right? It is already cooked. You cannot separate sweetness, sourness, and spiciness, and all these other tastes. You cannot separate them because everything is together. So, but when you taste it, um, your tongue can recognize, okay, there is sweetness there, and there is spiciness, and there is sourness, and all these tastes that with your wisdom you have to understand, okay, this is craving, this is the form aggregate, this is the feeling aggregate, this is perception, this is mental, these are mental formations, and this is consciousness. So you have to understand that with wisdom, but you cannot separate craving from the five aggregates. So if you have any questions regarding these, I mean, what we discussed, you can just ask right away. You can just raise your hand, and if you have something to say about it, you can do that. Do that. Uh, okay. So he asked this next question. Mm, Noble lady, how is their belief in self-identity? So how does this view in self-identity exist? So that is the question. So the answer to that question is an uneducated commoner, that means a normal person who has not learned the teachings of the Buddha, a normal person, and he does not see noble beings, he doesn't recognize the Buddhas. He has not mastered the teachings of noble beings. That means he hasn't mastered the teachings of the Buddha, and he is undisciplined in the Buddha's teachings. So such a person, he regards the body as his self, or he regards form as his self, or the body is owned by his self, or the body as contained within his self, or his self as contained within the body. So in these four ways, he consi- he he's having this view of self in these four ways. The first way is that he regards or he thinks that his body is his self, or he thinks that his body is owned by his self, or he thinks uh, there is this self and the body is in that self, or he thinks uh, uh, his self is in the body. So he is deceived uh, to the to his own body in these four ways, and he wants to or he wants to think about a self um, like connected with his body. So he always, so in these four ways, a person can be deceived. So he will think that his body is self, or he will think that his self owns his body, or he will think that the body is in the self, or self is in the body. So in these four ways, he gets deceived. So in the same way, uh, a normal person who has not trained in the Buddhist teachings will think about his feelings, the feelings that he experiences, are his self, or the feelings are owned by his self, or his self is within the feelings, or his feelings are within self. So in these four ways, he will be deceived, and he will think that these feelings have something to do with his self. So in that way, for all these five aggregates, an uneducated person, that means a person who has not trained in the Buddhist teachings, will be deceived and think that these five aggregates have something to do with his self. So, for each of these five aggregates, ways to get deceived and view of self. So that is called the 20-fold identity view. Okay? Because for all these five aggregates, for each of these five aggregates, a person can be deceived in four ways. So like if you take consciousness, a person can think, okay, the consciousness is me, or the consciousness belongs to me, or I am in my consciousness, or the consciousness is in me. So in these five ways, a person can be deceived uh, about these five aggregates. Okay, so altogether there are 20 ways to get deceived and be attached to the self identity or the identity view. So in this way, uh, there is this belief in self identity, or this view of self identity. So it is important to get rid of this self identity, to remove craving, because without removing this view of self, we cannot remove craving, because craving is the cause of suffering, right? You need to remove craving completely to be free from suffering. But we cannot do that as long as we have this self identity, the view of self. So the first stage of enlightenment, as the Buddha taught us, when somebody achieves the state of stream entry, that means the first stage of enlightenment, that noble disciple will completely eradicate identity view, the view of self, so that he is ready to uh, practice the path to remove craving completely, because he does not have this identity view. But uh, the people who are not enlightened, the normal beings, they have this identity view, so that it's like a very powerful hindrance for them to remove craving. So they are completely trapped in this samsara, because they have this identity view and they're not ready to remove craving, and they do not see this as dependently originated. That is how we explain this in the Dhamma. Uh, that means uh, is everything exists as a result of a cause. Okay, and self does not have anything to do with that. But as long as we have this view of self, or this identity view, we are not ready to look at this as something that exists as a result of a cause, and we are not ready to remove that cause to uh, to be free from the result. So the suffering is the result, craving is the cause. So if we need to get rid of suffering, we need to remove the cause of suffering, that is craving. We need to look at this as uh, something that exists as a result of a cause, right? So we should not uh, like think that there is this self, there is this me, or something that belongs to me, um, in this phenomena. Okay, so it is important to understand that we need to get rid of this the view of self or self identity or identity view in order to remove craving. So that's why the Buddha explained uh, identity view in this way. So we call this Sakkaya Ditthi. In Pali, it is called Sakkaya Ditthi or identity view. So a noble person, a person who has understood the teachings of the Buddha, he will not he will not think, or he will not see form as his self. Also, he will not see his form contained within himself. No, he will think that his self as something contained within his form. So he will a noble person will not consider form as something to do with self. He will always see form as something dependently originated. That means that he will see that this form uh, is there because of a cause. He will not consider that as something to do with self. So in the same way, he will understand that the feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, all of these five aggregates exist as a result of a cause. And that noble person will not consider that these five aggregates have something to do with his self. He will not consider these things as self. Also, it is important to understand that the Buddha didn't say that there is no self. Okay? Because a lot of people misunderstand this and say that there isn't a self, or there is no self. The Buddha never said that, because extremes. If somebody thinks that, okay, there is a self, that is also an extreme. We need to get rid of these two extremes because the Buddha calls it the middle way. The thing is that if you say that there is no self, you will not take responsibility of your actions, right? So whatever actions you do, you will have to face repercussions. So you will have to face uh, the results of your actions. Okay, so if you say that there is no self, then you can do whatever unwholesome deed and say, okay, there is no self, and I'm not responsible for any of the things that I did. But that is not true, because you have to take responsibility of your actions. So that's why the Buddha didn't say that there is no self. But instead, the Buddha explained what is suffering. And he said that suffering is the five aggregates. And he said that five aggregates are not you. These five aggregates are non-self. But it doesn't mean that there is no self. Also, it doesn't mean that there is a self. So there is a self and there is no self, are two extremes. So we have to get rid of these two extremes and understand that there is this suffering that exists. And this suffering, or the five aggregates, are not five aggregates are non-self. That is what he said. Okay, so that's why we need to learn the exact words of the Buddha, and we should not kind of paraphrase the Buddha's words, because if we like paraphrase, like if we use our own words to explain this, we will kind of distort the meaning. So these words are important to be memorized. So we need to quote the Buddha's words, because he did not mess up the words, and that's why we need to follow the exact words of the Buddha, because there are things that he did not say, and there are things that he actually said. So meaning, so this is identity and how um, or the belief in self-identity and not having that view of self-identity. So he explained these two he calls dhammas. Okay, so an uneducated normal person will have self-identity, and a noble disciple will not have self-identity. Okay, so Visakha, the lady disciple who came to Dhammadina Bhikkhuni, he asked, Noble lady, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? So what is the path? So she explained, right view, right. Okay, so different translators use different words. But in general, we can say right view, samadhi, and right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right? So of the noble path. Okay, now he asks an interesting question. Noble lady, is the Noble Eightfold Path conditional or non-conditional? So the answer is the Noble Eightfold Path is conditional. That means all these 8 factors are conditioned. That means they are results of their own causes. Okay, they cannot exist without a cause. So, but Nibbana is different. Nibbana is, it is unconditional, or it is, that does not depend on a cause, Nibbana. But the path to Nibbana, uh, it has 8 factors, and these 8 factors are conditional. So right view has a cause. You need to develop the cause to achieve right view. And right thoughts have a cause. And right speech have a cause. Right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, they all are dependently originated. That means they are conditional. There are conditions which have to be met or which have to be developed to um, develop these 8 factors. Okay. So the Noble Eightfold Path is conditional. So the Pali word is uh, uh, Attangiko Maggo Sankato Udahu Asankato. Sankato means conditioned. Asankato means unconditioned. So Nibbana is unconditioned. Nibbana does not exist as a result of a cause, but are conditioned. They exist as a result of a cause. So it is important to understand. So the Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned. So so then he asks the Noble. So you know about Sila Samadhi Panya, right? Sila means virtue, Samadhi means concentration, and Panya means wisdom. So the noble path can be explained in that way as well. Sila Samadhi Panya. So the Buddha, in many places, the Buddha said that you have to develop Sila Samadhi Panya, virtue, concentration, and wisdom to reach enlightenment, to reach Nibbana. So these three things are called the three aggregates, so three masses. So the five masses or five aggregates are form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. That is explained as suffering. But Sila Samadhi Panya is explained as the path to Nibbana, right? So, so that is called, they are called the three aggregates or three masses. So the question is the Noble Eightfold Path included in the three aggregates, or are the three aggregates included in the Noble Eightfold Path? So is the question clear? So the Buddha explained the Noble Path to reach Nibbana as Sila Samadhi Panya, virtue, concentration, and wisdom. Also, he explained the path as the Noble Eightfold Path: Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. Right views, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So he explained that in two ways: Sila Samadhi Panya and the Eightfold Path. So the question is the Noble Eightfold Path included in the three aggregates, Sila Samadhi Panya, or are the three aggregates, Sila Samadhi Panya, included in the Noble Eightfold Path? So that is the question. Because in one place, the Buddha said that when you take the Noble Eightfold Path, right view and right thoughts, that is called wisdom. And right speech, right action, and right livelihood, that is virtue. And right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration is called concentration. So he kind of explained the Sila Samadhi Panya in that way. So right view and right thoughts, the first two parts of the Noble Eightfold Path, that is called wisdom. And then right speech, right action, and right livelihood, that is called virtue. Right action, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, that is called concentration. So when you look at that, it seems like wisdom, virtue, and concentration. It, you feel like that, but the Buddha explained the three aggregates as Sila Samadhi Panya, not Panya, Sila, and Samadhi. So he explained it Sila Samadhi Panya, virtue, concentration, and wisdom. So he said you need to develop virtue and then concentration and then wisdom. So people can get confused. So that's why he asked this question. So is the Noble Eightfold Path included in the three aggregates, or are the three aggregates, Sila Samadhi Panya, included in the Noble Eightfold Path? So the answer is the Noble Eightfold Path is not included in the three aggregates. The three aggregates are included in the Noble Eightfold Path. So the three aggregates, so right view and right thoughts, that is wisdom, the wisdom aggregate. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood, that is concentration aggregate. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, that is called concentration aggregate. So that is how the Buddha explained this. Uh, so it is important to learn how he explained this, because if not, we will not really understand what the Buddha meant. Okay, so she explains here, Sir Visakha, right speech, right action, and right livelihood are included in the virtue aggregate. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are included in the concentration aggregate. Right, right view, so perspective means view, and right thoughts, These are the first two parts of the Noble Eightfold Path. These two are included in the wisdom aggregate. So that's how the Buddha explained this. So the Noble Eightfold Path is not included in the three aggregates, but the three aggregates are included in the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so this is kind of important to remember. So you might not understand this at first, but it is important to remember how the Buddha explained this. Okay, so the next question he asked is, what is concentration and what are the objects of concentration? And what phenomena are the supports of concentration and what is the development of concentration? So the answer to that question is mental focus is concentration. Mental focus. Let's see how he explained it in Pali. Chittassa ekaggata, ayang samadhi. So ekaggata means focus. So different translators use different words. So Bhikkhu Sujato, he's a monk from the Thai tradition. I think he's in England. This monastery called Amaravati. I think he's a student of Ajahn Chah. So he used the word immersion to describe samadhi, but other monks, other translators use the word concentration. So I personally like the word concentration because in this sutta, uh, samadhi it is explained as chittasa ekaggata. So ekaggata means focus. So concentration is a good word to describe that. But when you say immersion, it is like it is like you like dive into uh, like something a meditative state because different people do meditation in different ways. So when they experience samadhi or like uh, a, a higher state in meditation, they feel like diving into some kind of a mental state. So they use the word immersion to describe that. But when you look at the words in the teachings, samadhi is explained as chittas ekaggata. Ekaggata means focus. So the better word to describe this is concentration, not immersion. But Bhikkhu Sujato, he used the word immersion to describe samadhi. But Bhikkhu Bodhi, so do you know Bhikkhu Bodhi? So Bhikkhu Bodhi is an American monk. He lived in Sri Lanka for many years. He used the word concentration to describe that. So different translators use different words. So I personally prefer the word concentration to describe samadhi. Uh, so samadhi means chittassa ekaggata. That means uh, mental focus. So samadhi means mental focus. Hmm. So Visakha, mental focus is concentration. The four establishments of mindfulness are the objects of concentration. So that means Satara Satipatthana. You know about Satipatthana? There is this very famous sutta, Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So in that sutta, the Buddha explained the four foundations of mindfulness. Kaya Anupassana is um, uh, body body foundation of mindfulness. That means we have to be mindful of our body, that is kaya anupassana, and vedana anupassana, that is vedana means feelings. So we have to be mindful of our feelings. That is the next foundation of mindfulness. The next one is chitta anupassana. Chitta means mind. So we have to be mindful of our mind. And then Dhammanupassana. Dhamma means phenomena, what we experience. And we have to be mindful of that. So these four are called the four foundations of mindfulness. So, so that is the object of concentration. That means we have to concentrate on these four foundations of mindfulness. So if we establish our mindfulness on these four things: body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, or Dhamma, or what we experience, then we can develop concentration. So the object of concentration is this four foundations of mindfulness, or satipatthana, right? The four foundations of mindfulness are the objects of concentration. So he asks precise questions, and Dhammadinna gives precise answers. The four right exertions are the support of concentration. That means four efforts, right effort. Um, the four kinds of mindfulness meditation are the basis for concentration. And the four right efforts are the prerequisites for concentration. Chat- Chattaro Sammapadana, Samadhi Parikkara. The four types of right effort. So the way the Buddha explained right effort in the Noble Eightfold Path is that so so the Noble Eightfold Path is sammaditya, right view, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and then uh, uh, right effort, right? So the right effort, he explained that in four ways. That means he said right effort is fourfold. Uh, there are the effort to remove already arisen unwholesome states. That is number one. And to remove or uh, to avoid unarisen unwholesome states. So you need effort to avoid unarisen unwholesome states. That is also an effort that we have to take. And then we have to uh, cultivate unarisen wholesome states, and we have to develop already arisen wholesome states. So these are the fourfold effort. Like there can be unwholesome states that have not arisen in us right now, but in the future they can arise. So like if we are not careful enough, uh, these unwholesome states can arise in our minds. So we need to take effort to avoid unarisen, unwholesome states. So that is the first part of right effort. And then we had to remove already arisen, unwholesome states. And then we had to cultivate unarisen, wholesome states. And then we had to develop already arisen, wholesome states. So these are the four types of right effort. So the four types of right efforts are the prerequisites for concentration. So in order to develop concentration, you need this fourfold right effort. Okay. And the object of concentration are the four foundations of mindfulness. So you need right effort and right mindfulness to develop right concentration. So learning these words are very important. Uh, and then the answer to the next question is the cultivation, development, making much of these very same things is the development of concentration. Okay. So we need to cultivate, develop right immersion or right mindfulness and right effort to develop right concentration. So in order to develop samadhi, mm, developing right mindfulness and right effort are very important. Um, so then he asks, how many how many kinds of activity are there? Or let's see the Pali word. Katipana is sankhara. So sankhara means formations. So how many kinds of formations are there? There is physical formation, verbal formation, and mental formation. There are three kinds of formation. So physical formation means breathing in and out. So this is how we explain because uh, when we develop anapanasati, the breathing meditation to achieve enlightenment, and to develop higher concentration, you need that meditation. So breathing in and breathing out, uh, when you develop that meditation, breathing in and breathing out is the only physical activity that uh, you can understand when you do that meditation because you completely focus on breathing in and breathing out, right? So that is a physical formation, and then verbal formation means thought and consideration. So I will explain this. And the mental formation is recognition and feeling, or perception and feeling. So he described this. Uh, so, 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 the, so he asked another question. Visaka asked another question. Why is breathing in and breathing out physical formation? Why is thought and examination verbal formation? Why is recognition and feeling mental formation? The answer is breathing in and breathing out are bodily phenomena bound to the body. So when you do anapanasati meditation, breathing meditation, breathing in and breathing out, they are bound to the body, right? So they are called uh, uh, physical formation or bodily formation. And and she explains, Dhammadina explains, previously one thinks and considers, and afterwards one breaks into speech. That means when we speak, there is something going on in our mind, right? That is called verbal formation. So in our mind, we have to form um, this formation in our mind before we speak. So if we do not have that in our mind, we cannot speak words. So we need to think and then consider before we speak. So they are called vitakka vichara. So vitakka means our thoughts. So we need to have these thoughts. Vichara means to consider, or like we call that sustained thoughts. That means we have to think and then consider uh, upon that before we break into speech. So when we speak out words, these formations should be there in our mind. Therefore, this formation, thoughts, and consideration, they are called verbal verbal formations. We need these formations to speak words. Uh, So just give me 1 second. Okay, so the Buddha said, Dhammadinna said in this sutta, um, recognition and feeling, or perception and feeling, are mental phenomena. They are bound to the mind. So recognition means perception. So you remember in the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. So perception and feeling, they are bound to the mind. Okay, so they are called uh, uh, chitta sankhara. Chitta sankhara means mental formations. So there is bodily formations, verbal formations, and mental formations. So bodily formations means breathing in and breathing out. Verbal formations are thoughts and sustained thought, and mental formations are feeling and perception. The reason the Buddha explained this is that when you develop meditation, first, like when you develop anapanasati meditation, uh, first we have to focus on our breath, breathing in and breathing out. And when we develop meditation and achieve jhanas, the Buddha said, if you pass the first jhana and achieve second jhana, our vitakka and vichara will subside. They will vanish. And that means vitakka vichara means uh, the mental formations that you need to speak words. These formations will subside. They will vanish. And in that jhana, in that state, we will feel breathing in and breathing out, but the formations we need to speak out words will vanish in that jhana. And then when the Buddha said that when you develop meditation and achieve the fourth jhana, uh, when you achieve fourth jhana, breathing in and breathing out, the in breath and out breath will vanish. So a person who achieves fourth jhana will not breathe in, or he will not breathe out, because that that in breath and out breath will completely vanish in that jhana. So it is kind of very interesting. And the Buddha said, if you go beyond that jhana and achieve the formless jhanas, and even go beyond that, so there is this particular state of meditation called Nirodha Samapatti. That is a state of meditation achieved by the Arahants. And when they achieve that, these two will also vanish. Recognition and feeling, or perception and feeling, will also vanish. So these arahants, when they achieve this jhana, this state of meditation, they will not have uh, uh, these vitakka and vichara. That means the mental formations needed to speak out words. They will subside, and breathe in breath and out breath will subside. And then feelings and perception will also completely vanish in that jhana, and they will be in that jhana for a particular amount of time, and then uh, uh, like wake up from that meditation, and these formations will slowly appear in them. So there are these states of meditation that one has to achieve to reach nibbana. Okay, so that's why the Buddha explained these things. Uh, so now uh, now uh, this lay disciple named Visakha, he asked this question. I told you about that arhants achieve. This is called Nirodha Samapatti, the attainment of cessation of recognition and feeling. That means recognition means perception, feeling means feeling. So perception and feeling will completely cease in that jhana. So the question is, how can I cease perception and feeling completely? So this is how Dhammadina explained this. When a monk is attaining the cessation of recognition and feeling, or the cessation of uh, uh, perception and feeling, it does not occur to him, I will attain the cessation of recognition and feeling. So when he achieves this jhana, he will not have the thought, I will attain this jhana. Or when he's um, attaining it, he will not get the thought, like he will not have the thought, I am attaining the cessation of feeling and perception. And once he's attained that, he will not have the thought, I have attained the cessation of perception and feeling. Rather, it is the prior development of his mind that guides it to that state. That means that monk has to develop uh, his mind in such a way before attaining that jhana, and that state of mind will take him to achieve that state of meditation. Uh, and then after some time, he will come back from that meditation. So it is some kind of a higher state of meditation that the Buddha explained that one has to achieve before achieving Nibbana, right? So it is quite interesting. So at the time of the Buddha, what we can understand from this discussion is that at the time of the Buddha's disciples, they were very keen on this and they were very interested in achieving this state of meditation to achieve the end of suffering. So, and then he asks, when a monk is attaining that jhana, what phenomena cease first? The body formation or the speech formation or the mind formation? So body formation means in-breath and out-breath. Speech formation is thought and sustained thought. Mind formation is uh, feeling and perception. So, so the answer is when a monk is attaining the cessation of, or when a monk is attaining that jhana, that state of meditation, the speech formation ceases first, and then the body formation, and then the mind formation. That's how it happens. Because in the second jhana, speech formation will cease, and in the fourth jhana, body formation or in breath and out breath will cease, and in the final jhana, the mind formation or um, feeling and perception will cease. Okay, and when he wakes up from that meditation, mind formation will appear first, and then when he climbs down the stage of meditation, first mind formations will appear, and then in breath and out breath will appear, that is body formation, and then verbal formations, thoughts and sustained thoughts will appear. That's how he will wake up from this meditation. So there are these stages in meditation one has to achieve gradually. Okay, so that's what we have to understand in this discussion. So we might not be able to achieve this in this life, but still we need to understand that there are different stages in meditation that we have to gradually achieve. Uh, Okay, so he asked this question. How many kinds of feeling are there? So there are three kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. So what is pleasant feeling? What is unpleasant feeling? And what is neutral feeling? So the answer is uh, anything physical or mental that is felt as pleasant and agreeable, this is called pleasant feeling. Anything physical or mental that is felt as unpleasant and disagreeable is unpleasant feeling. Anything physical or mental that is felt as neither agreeable nor disagreeable, this is neutral feeling. Okay, so there are these three types of feeling that we experience: pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. Uh, so there is another interesting question. In regard to pleasant feeling, what is pleasant and what is unpleasant? In regard to unpleasant feeling, what is pleasant and what is unpleasant? In regard to neutral feeling, what is pleasant and what is unpleasant? So there is something unpleasant in pleasant feeling. And also there is something pleasant in unpleasant feeling. So Visakha asks about that. And the answer to that question is when the pleasant feeling is stable, that feeling is pleasant. When you have a pleasant feeling and when that is stable, if that does not change, that is pleasant. But when that pleasant feeling changes, it becomes unpleasant. Okay. And when an unpleasant feeling is stable, it is unpleasant because you don't want to have that unpleasant. So when you have that unpleasant feeling and when that is stable, it is pleasant. And about neutral feeling, a neutral feeling is pleasant when there is knowledge and unpleasant when there is no knowledge. Because it is very hard to understand neutral feeling, right? We can easily understand pleasant feeling and we can easily understand uh, unpleasant feeling, but neutral feeling is kind of subtle. It's very difficult to understand. So if somebody has knowledge, when there is neutral feeling, that is pleasant. And if somebody does not have that knowledge, when he experiences neutral feeling, it is unpleasant. So that is how it was explained. Uh, the reason is, so you can understand the reason in the next question. What tendency to experience a pleasant feeling? There is an internal defilement that works with that pleasant feeling. Okay, so there is a tendency of defilements in us when we experience that pleasant feeling. And also when we experience the unpleasant feelings, there is also a certain defilement that that is there when we experience this unpleasant feeling. And also when we experience this neutral feeling, there is this internal tendency in us that's a defilement. So Visakha is asking about that. The answer is the tendency towards lust accompanies a pleasant feeling. That means when we experience a pleasant feeling, there is this internal tendency towards lust that goes along with that pleasant feeling. Because whenever we experience the pleasant feeling, there is desire, there is lust that goes along with that pleasant feeling. And the tendency towards aversion or anger accompanies in unpleasant feeling. So when that tendency towards hatred or aversion, because we don't like unpleasant feelings. So whenever we experience pleasant feeling, there is lust. Whenever we experience unpleasant feeling, there is anger. And the tendency towards ignorance accompanies neutral feeling. Whenever we experience neutral feeling, there is ignorance. There is this tendency towards ignorance. So that's why a neutral feeling is pleasant when there is knowledge, and it is unpleasant when there is no knowledge. That means a normal person, when he experiences neutral feeling, his mind is covered with ignorance. He cannot understand what's going on. So that's why we need meditation to gradually develop our mind so that we are sensible, or we will understand these internal tendencies that goes along with these feelings, right? Uh, so there is this tendency towards lust accompanying a pleasant feeling, and there is this tendency towards aversion or anger that accompanies uh, unpleasant feeling, and there is this tendency towards ignorance that accompanies a neutral feeling. Uh, so there is another part of this. Uh, so I will kind of brief it now. So lust should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling. Aversion should be abandoned in regard to unpleasant feeling. Ignorance should be abandoned in regard to neutral feeling. But there are certain pleasant feelings that does not have lust. There are certain unpleasant feelings that doesn't have hatred, and there is this certain types of neutral feelings that does not have ignorance, and Dhamma explains it here. Associated is spiritual holds enough. Attain remain. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I lost connection. Okay. Okay, here Dhammadina explains a monk who is secluded from sensuality and who is secluded from all unwholesome phenomena and remains in the first jhana, which has vitakka and vichara, thought and sustained thought, and rapture and happiness produced by seclusion. That means he achieves that jhana, that state of meditation, that feeling. So there is a pleasant feeling in that jhana, in that meditative state, but loss does not accompany that pleasant feeling. So that is why we need to develop concentration to develop wisdom, because whenever we experience pleasant feelings, there will be this tendency towards lust, and we will not be able to realize the noble truths if lust is always accompanying that pleasant feeling. But if we do meditation and achieve jhana, the first jhana, there will be a pleasant feeling, but that pleasant feeling will not accompany lust with it, right? So that is something very important, because if you develop that state of that state of meditation and achieve that jhana, you will experience that pleasant feeling. Also, lust will not accompany that pleasant feeling, so that you get a chance to develop wisdom and understand or realize the Four Noble Truths and remove craving completely. So meditation is an important part in this practice. So tendency towards lust does not accompany that pleasant feeling in that jhana. And also she explains how aversion will not accompany unpleasant feeling. So a monk or a person who practices the Buddha's teachings will reflect in this way. When will I attain and remain in the state of being which the noble ones have attained and now remain in? That means he will think, okay, there are the Buddhist disciples who have achieved these stages of enlightenment, and I am still a practitioner. And when will I achieve this? So he will always think, when can I achieve this? When I'm trying so hard, and when can I achieve these stages of enlightenment? And when he thinks like that, there will be an unpleasant feeling, because he will feel a little bit sad because he's trying hard and he still have not achieved that stage, and he wants to achieve this stage of enlightenment, and there will be an unpleasant feeling when he thinks like that. When he thinks, when will I attain and remain in that state which the noble ones have attained? Okay, with the establishment of longing to unsurpassed liberation. So he will have that, he will long for that state of enlightenment. He will have that longing in him. And then he will feel sad about it, because of that longing, there will be dejection or sadness in him. Okay, because of that longing. So that is an unpleasant feeling. Okay, that is an unpleasant feeling, but aversion, that the tendency towards aversion will not accompany that unpleasant feeling. So that is also something important. So when you practice the teachings of the Buddha, and if you have not achieved these stages of enlightenment, you will have that longing to achieve this higher states. Okay, but when you have these thoughts, when will I achieve this? And when you have that longing, there will be an unpleasant feeling, but aversion or hatred will not accompany that unpleasant feeling. But in our normal life, when we experience unpleasant feeling, there will always be hatred, or there will always be aversion when we experience unpleasant feeling. But this particular unpleasant feeling will not accompany aversion with it. So I hope you understand that. So Dhammadina explains, when somebody achieves fourth jhana, when somebody achieves the first jhana and the second jhana and the third jhana and the fourth jhana, that state of meditation, and that jhana does not have pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling. It has purity of equanimity and mindfulness in that jhana. And if somebody achieves that jhana, the tendency towards ignorance does not accompany that. So if somebody gradually achieves these jhanas, the inner defilements, or the tendencies towards these defilements will gradually cease, so that it will open a door for the practitioner to achieve enlightenment. So that's why meditation is important. So, and he asks, what is the counterpart of pleasant feeling? The answer is, the counterpart of pleasant feeling is unpleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of unpleasant feeling? The counterpart of unpleasant feeling is pleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of neutral feeling? The counterpart of neutral feeling is ignorance. What is the counterpart of ignorance? The counterpart of ignorance is knowledge. What is the counterpart of knowledge? The counterpart of knowledge is liberation. What is the counterpart of liberation? The counterpart of liberation is nibbana. What is the counterpart of nibbana? And then she said, you have overstepped the bounds of inquiry. You were not able to understand the spiritual life merges into nibbana, ends at nibbana, concludes with nibbana. Uh, so the last question is not valid. The counterpart of liberation is nibbana, but if somebody asks what is the counterpart of nibbana, that there is no answer for that question, because the whole practice in the Buddha's teaching ends in nibbana. So she said, Visakha, if you wish, you may approach the Blessed One. You can go to the Buddha and ask him about this matter, and you may remember in whatever way the Blessed One explains it. And he goes, so he like he respects Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni, and he approaches the Buddha, and he venerates the Buddha, and he asks the exact same questions that he asked from, like he asked Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni. Um, and the Buddha gave the same answers, and he said, Visakha, Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni is wise. So this was said by the Buddha. The Buddha said, Visakha, Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni is wise. Visakha, Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni has great wisdom. Visakha, if you had asked me about that matter, I would have explained it the same way that Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni explained it. That is the meaning of it. Remember it in that way. So Dhammadinna Bhikkhuni, she was an arahant, and she gave the exact same answers as the Buddha would. Uh, so, so then uh, the Buddha gave permission for the monks to remember this teaching as it was said by the Buddha. So and then this became a sutta that was memorized by the Sangha, right? So like, do you have any questions? So if you have any questions, or you can send me a personal message so I can answer. So we will be discussing suttas like this in this program. So I hope this discussion. So I would like you to ask questions, and we can discuss the teaching so that it can be clear for all of us. So now we have kind of run out of time. So next week also we will discuss a sutta, and then um, we can make things clear for all of us to understand the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so if you have any questions, send me a message. So we will meet next week. Until then, take care. May you all be well and happy. Okay. See you.